I'm walking through a ghost town, y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. You were lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page, but we still read that book, and we still run that race. Ay, Mississippi racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi racer riding out till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi racer riding out, wheels stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay, red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine. I am Chris, and of course, that over there, that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
I am doing great, coming off of a great sports weekend. Just got through watching one of the most entertaining WrestleManias I've ever seen. So I'm on a sports high coming into Monday.
Mo, before we got WrestleMania stuff to talk about, we got a lot of stuff to get to this morning, but I wanted to start with this. Obviously, it has been Caitlin Clark Mania for a while now, for a hot minute now. But as we geared up for this weekend's national title game against South Carolina and Iowa, the Caitlin Clark stuff kind of jumped into another stratosphere, if you will. And then everyone who had access to a microphone apparently also had an opinion on stuff related to Caitlin Clark. And there's two specific stories I want to talk about. So the first one I want to talk about is Lynette Woodward. Mo, when I say that name, do you know who she is?
Yeah, she's one of the all-time great basketball players. She used to play for USC, I believe.
Absolutely. So Lynette made some comments over the weekend about how Caitlin Clark is not the all-time scoring champion and how she is the all-time scoring champion. Now, context is always king. Lynette played before the NCAA existed. Therefore, her scoring title, which in all fairness was better than Caitlin's, doesn't exist according to NCAA record books. So in all fairness, she is correct. During her college career, she did score more points than Caitlin Clark did. Now, obviously, she received some pushback for that, Mo. And over the weekend, she walked those comments back. She actually tweeted after the national title game that Caitlin Clark is college basketball's all-time leading scorer and kind of squashed any of that. But I looked at that, Mo, and I thought to myself, okay, I understand. But is it not the same conversation? Because also, Mo, in her comments, she also made the comment of, well, you know, add a men's basketball and take away the three-point line, and then we can talk. Isn't that what we're always doing with these conversations? At what is the three-point line? It was more physical. You couldn't touch the wide receivers were murdered every day on the field. So it's not, you know, that's always what we're doing when we're talking about comparing players that are 50 years apart, essentially, as far as when they played the game.
Yeah, and look, I think that we should always acknowledge the games have all evolved. That's MLB, that's NFL, that's basketball. They have evolved. They're different. So I understand the frustration from younger players because they feel like they're not getting their due whenever they make an accomplishment, and then somebody from who was a star in the 80s or 90s say, well, you're putting up those numbers because of this or that. And this is my defense for the younger generation or the younger era in all sports. They didn't make up the rules. They literally came into the league that they're in, and these are the rules. They are playing with the rules that they were given. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not against the players. It's no slight. There are great players in this era. and they deserve every bit of respect, every bit of shine, the flowers that come their way. I don't mind having debates about great all-time players versus current players or things of that nature. I just hate when the conversation goes below the belt, and instead of just saying they were all great, but this is the reason why I feel this way, we seem to have to like drag somebody else down to push somebody else up. And I think there's no greater example of that, Chris, than Caitlin Clark. Every time she does something that brings attention to the women's game, which should be the main thing, right? What she's doing to bring attention to the game, somebody comes out of nowhere and go, well, actually, like when I played, and there's a reason to bring her down, and I don't understand that, but that's just where we're at in sports.
Now, as we're wrapping up Caitlin Clark's college career, let's just put a little bow on it, shall we, Mo? D1 scoring leader, 3,951 points. She is the only Division I player in NCAA history with 3,500 points, 1,000 assists, and 850-plus rebounds in her career. Most points in a single season in Division I women's college basketball with 1,234. She has the most 3 points in a single season in D1 history, most career points, assists, and 3 points in the NCAA tournament history. She is the only player with 40 points and 10 assists in a tournament game. She has 2 of them, by the way. She is the only player with 30-plus point triple-double in a tournament. Only D1 player to lead college basketball in points and assists in a single season. Oh, she did that twice. Big Ten all-time assist leader, and the only player with more than 3 career 25-point triple-doubles. She has 10. Mo, she has done it all in the world of college basketball. So you look at it and you say, okay, what is next for her? Obviously, it's going to be the WNBA. Will she make some pit stops along the way? The Big Three has offered some money for her to come do a handful of games.
Yeah.
We'll see what that looks like. But as she prepares for what is most likely going to be a stop in the WNBA, now we have people who want to talk about that, Mo. Diana Taurasi, UConn legend with the Phoenix Mercury. She has come out and she has offered her opinion on Caitlin Clark. And her opinion is that Caitlin needs to understand that reality is coming when she gets to the WNBA. She said, quote, "You look superhuman playing against some 18-year-olds, but when you're going to come play with some grown women that have been playing professional basketball for a long time, it's going to be different. There is going to be a transition period where you're going to have to give yourself some grace because you're a rookie." So I look at that 2 ways, Mo. First of all, obviously as a rookie in any league where you're playing with full-grown adults who have been doing this for a long time, there's going to be a transition period. I think that is a obvious statement. But at the same time, Mo, I don't think reality is coming for Caitlin Clark. She is a very talented player. She is going to have success at the next level. Again, you look at some of these comments that people are making when microphones are put in front of their face and they're asked about Caitlin Clark, and I look at it and I say to myself, we're looking for headlines. We're looking to get our names mentioned again because, yes, she's probably going to struggle a little bit as a rookie, but don't sit here and try to diminish all the compliments I just said about her by saying she's no longer going to play against 18-year-old girls. Let's not sit here and pretend that Caitlin Clark's entire NCAA tournament stretch this season was just her out there playing against a bunch of 18-year-old freshmen. That wasn't the case, Mo. Like, she's gone against people her age in college. Let's not pretend that she's just playing against 17 and 18-year-old college freshmen, and that's where her stats are coming from, because that's not the case.
It's not the case. It's weird because we just keep it. She has become very polarizing and not of her own making. Like, I feel like it, and I hope I'm wrong, but there's a lot of resentment towards her, maybe because of the stardom that she's already achieved, maybe because of the attention and the media coverage that she's achieved. And I understand that. I do. And I'm up for any kind of debate about is she deserving of it. I think if you elevate your game, if you elevate your sport, then you're deserving of the attention that you're getting. Look, I don't know what her ceiling will be in the WNBA. I think she's going to be a star. Will she be the star of stars? We have to see that. I think she will have growing pains like all rookies, but I think that, to me, at worst, she's going to be a star. At best, she'll be the best thing we've ever seen in the WNBA. So I don't understand where Diana's coming from. And Diana Taurasi is another all-time great player, who's gotten a lot of flowers, who's gotten a lot of acknowledgement. Maybe not to the degree that Caitlin Clark has gotten in college. And I do feel, to some degree, right, like there's a little bit of resentment, right, from people like Taurasi, who she'll say, well, I didn't put up as many numbers, but I did win it all. I did win. I mean, I think that's where a lot of the pushback is coming from. And all I would say is, how many people was watching Iowa basketball ever until Caitlin Clark came along? And from what I believe I read this correct, they'd never been to the Final Four, and Caitlin Clark took them to two of those. And they're a good team, but I would not call that a star-studded team. So I think she's deserving of her shine, and I'm a little disappointed that some of the stars, while I know you're a competitor and you're going to compete against her, you could still embrace the fact that she's elevated the game, and leave it at that, rather than saying like, reality's coming. Like, when you say something like that, it's as if to say like, well, when she gets here, she's not going to be that good. And I disagree with that. I disagree with that. She's not just somebody who shoots threes. She's not a one-trick pony. She can put the ball on the floor. She can drive to the basket. She's got great court vision, terrific passer. If she's going to struggle, she'll struggle like rookies struggle. If she's going to struggle, she may struggle defensively. But I think that her overall game, she's going to be a star. So I would disagree with anybody to think that she's overrated. She's rated the way she should be rated.
I think what you're looking at is a lot of resentment and a lot of hate on Caitlin because she's being anointed as the face of women's basketball, the face of the resurgence of women's basketball, or not even the resurgence, the surge of women's basketball. And I heard a lot of comments from former players that, women's basketball has been on the uptick for a minute now. The WNBA, the ratings have been steadily getting a little bit better. If you look at what the Aces have done and the attention they have brought to the sport, and the game of women's college basketball over the last few seasons has also steadily been growing and getting better and getting more recognition. And that's not all because of Caitlin Clark. And I agree with that. Caitlin Clark isn't the only reason that women's college basketball is what it is. But Mo, you know how this works. You have to put a face on it. That's the way it works. Look at Major League Baseball. When Major League Baseball does a commercial, are they just showing the baseball diamond and the sound effects of the bat hitting the ball? No, right. They're putting faces to it, right? They're taking 3 or 4 of their biggest stars, and that's who they're promoting. Are those the only 3 or 4 stars in baseball? No. But those are the ones that they think are going to have the resonance with the audience. When football highlights their stars, why is it always quarterbacks, Mo? Are the quarterbacks the only ones that matter out there? No. Are there other stars out there? Yes. But usually it's the quarterbacks who get attention. That's just the way it works. It's not because they're the only stars on the field, and it's not because only offensive people can impact the game. There's amazing defensive players as well, but it's just the way it works. Caitlin is the face being put on this movement, and Mo, I would argue she's backed it up. She's aside from winning a championship, she's accomplished every single thing statistically that an individual player can accomplish in the world of not just women's college basketball, in the world of college basketball in general.
Correct.
So when you have that level of greatness that you can conceptualize and you can attach actual numbers and statistics to it, of course, that's the person that's going to get the flowers the most. And that's the person that's going to be at the forefront of the surge. Because sure, you can rattle off 4 or 5 other great women college basketball players, but when you start talking stats, they don't got what Caitlin has. They're good players, and they're going to be good in the WNBA as well, but none of them are what Caitlin is currently. And I don't know if any of them have the ceiling that she has either. So for me, it's that simple.
I'll just put it this way. In her victory speech last night, Coach Don Staley of South Carolina, and congratulations to South Carolina's Gamecocks. In her moment where she just joined an elite club of coaches, there's only 3 coaches have won 3 or more national championships. Gino, the great Pat Summitt, and now Don Staley. And in her victory speech, where it's her moment, she took time out to acknowledge Caitlin Clark and where Caitlin Clark has taken the game and where she thinks Caitlin Clark will take the game when she goes to the next level. That's from Don Staley, who's an all-time great in her own right. In that moment, she's acknowledging everything that Caitlin has accomplished, and I think that says it all.
100%. Let's pivot to some Major League Baseball stuff. I'm going to press the JG button over here on my side, and we're going to get JG here on the show. We got a lot of things to discuss this morning. JG, welcome to the show. How are you this morning, sir?
Doing good. How are you guys doing this morning?
Good morning, JG.
JG, let's start with this. Every now and then I throw some generic baseball etiquette things your way just to get an opinion of a player. So this weekend you got Toronto and the Yankees playing, and it's 9-2. And the cover boy of MLB 24, the game, Vlad Jr., he crushes a home run. It's now 9-3. He's running the bases, shushing the Yankee fans at Yankee Stadium, still down 6 runs. JG, what is your take on celebrating home runs where your team is still getting trounced? I mean, I know it's parallel to the bat flip conversation, but you know, I think with the bat flip, you can look at it as that's something I did. I crushed a home run, so I'm celebrating the magnificence of my home run. Usually, when you taunt to the crowd, you're taunting because you just did something where your team's winning or you're a lot closer. I don't know. It's weird to taunt when you're down 6 to me in baseball.
Yeah, this is where the players policing themselves, they're not able to do anymore, and they've kind of taken that part out of the game because, again, I'm an old school mindset guy. If you, by all means, you can shush us, you can shush our fans, you can bat flip, do whatever you want. Your next AB, you're getting the ball up and in on you. And you can't do that anymore, though. That's where these hit. I'm a hitter. I was a hitter, and I never did anything like that. I told you guys I've never bat flipped. I never, when I hit a ball over the fence, I'm running until I know the ball's over. I was old school. I was afraid of getting hit, up and in or whatnot, and I still got hit up and in. That's a different story. But players are not afraid of that anymore because if a pitcher goes up and in, it's basically you're suspended for 2 weeks or whatnot. I mean, so there's not a fear in that process to where you can go and do something like this. And again, yeah, you're losing in doing this. That doesn't look good. It looks weak. It looks very weak for Vlad, and I get it. You're the best player on the team of Toronto. The Yankee fans are one of the worst fans, and you know this, Chris. They're one of the worst fans in sports, and they're the worst fans, or one of the worst fans, to deal with as an opposing player. And they're going to it. Okay, make sure I gotta get that part. But they're the worst for an opposing player, and they're equally worse for the team's best player of the opposing team. So for Vlad, this is weak. You want to shut up the Yankee fans. You ignore them. You get around the bases. You go back in the dugout. You high five your team. You do the celebration that you do in Toronto, that if the Blue Jays do, and you go about your business and you continue playing the game. That's how you handle the situation. You don't shush, and then you bring more ire to yourself and where it's going to get worse. It wasn't going to get better. If that's what you're hoping for, it's not going to get better by shushing the Yankee crowd. My goodness, you're talking about 40,000 Yankee fans, and they're now pissed off. And I don't want to deal with 40,000 pissed off New Yorkers. I don't know why Vlad Guerrero Jr. would want to do that. So I'm not a fan of this way of celebrating. Leave it on the field, especially as an opposing player. Don't instigate, and that's what Guerrero did, was instigate.
JG, I know we're only about 10 or 11 games into the season, but as you kind of take a look at some of the starts these teams have gotten off to, the Red Sox are off to a 7-3 start. The Guardians are off to a 7-2 start. The Pirates are off to an 8-2 start. Those are three teams where coming into the season, and it's a long season, 150 games to go. They can all very easily finish under 500. But those are three teams that you looked at coming in where expectations weren't super high for them. But 10, 11 games in, they're playing good baseball. Of those three teams, the Pirates, the Guardians, and the Red Sox, which of those three kind of stand out to you? Obviously, the Guardians took a big blow to their pitching staff, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. But of those three starts, do you see any of those sticking with those three teams, or do you think that eventually things will even out for all three of them, and they'll kind of be where we thought they were going to be?
Well, the surprise of that group of three is the Red Sox, because they were the last place team in their division. The Guardians were a disappointing team last year. They were a lot of people in 2023 picked them to be at least a contender for the division, and they fell flat. And there was a lot of issues with Terry Francona's health being a factor, and the injuries to Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie. They could not bounce back from. And I know they're dealing with Shane Bieber now being out again. But as far as for right now, for speaking at the moment right now, the Guardians 7-2 they're right there. But the Red Sox, who are a last place team, and yes, they were in one of the better divisions in baseball in 2023, where everybody was above 500. But the Red Sox were still a last place team. And they had a lot of issues that they did not address in the offseason either. A lot of people talk about them as a last-place team. Now, are they still capable of being a last-place team in 2024? I do think that's the case. I think they're just playing above what they are. But I think they will come back down to earth more so than the Guardians or the Pirates. Pirates, it's not much of a surprise what the Pittsburgh Pirates are doing, because they were a young, exciting team last year. They were the talk of the town in May. And when injuries hit them with O'Neal Cruz and pitching staff kind of started getting hit with injuries, that's when they started falling off. But if they're healthy, they're exciting. And that's what we're seeing right now with Pittsburgh, is they're an exciting group of players that are on a hot start right now. So I'm not necessarily surprised that Pittsburgh Pirates are 8-2 at the moment, leading their division, but I am surprised the Boston Red Sox currently are leading their division, or not leading the division, but they're a game behind the Yankees in the division and doing what they're doing right now. I do think, again, that will be, of the three, that will be the team that does come back down to earth and fall down the standings a little bit.
And then looking at the other side of the spectrum, your last place teams, 10 or 11 games in, the Blue Jays, the White Sox, the Astros are tied with the A's for last in their division. The Marlins are 1-9. The Cardinals are last, but they're 500. And then you have the Rockies at 2-8. So let's take the Cardinals out of it, and let's just look at the Rockies, the Marlins, the Astros, the White Sox, and the Blue Jays. Some of those teams were not expected to be in last place 12 games into the season. Again, long way to go. But what are you seeing out of Toronto at 4-6? What are you seeing out of the Astros at 3-7? Yeah, we can say it's early, but another 2 weeks of sub 500 baseball, and now you're looking at being 6 or 7 or 8 games under 500. Again, you can come back from that, but once you start getting 7, 8, 9, 10 games under, if that's where it goes, it becomes a little bit harder. So obviously the first week or two in, JG, no big deal. We can right the ship. But once you get 3 or 4 weeks in, if you're still playing below 500, now you got to look at it and be like, well, it's going to take a minute to dig out to get back to 500. And then we got to go chase down the rest of the division. So what are you seeing from teams like the Astros and the Blue Jays who aren't off to the best starts, but by no means out of it this early?
Well, for the Blue Jays, it's been a tough part of their schedule already right at the jump. You had a 4-game series against Tampa that you split 2-2. You had a series against Houston, and you had a series against the Yankees. And they all have been on the road. They've been on the road for the first 2 weeks of the season. So they're going to be at home finally today against the Mariners. But that's a tough stretch. But at the same time, I look at it as this: you're supposed to be a team, Toronto, that has been talked about as a contender for the last 4 years, and you have fallen short every single year. And at some point, it's no longer an excuse. You have to play up. You have a young core group with Guerrero, with Biggio, with Bichette. You have a good veteran in George Springer. You have everything that you have in your disposal. You have a good pitching staff with Kevin Gausman. Again, not an elite staff. I won't sit there and say that this is an elite type of pitching staff, but it's a good pitching staff. And yet you continue to fall short every single year and not be able to challenge and contend for the division. You let the Rays win the division. You let the Orioles come out of nowhere last year and win the division. And you're supposed to be this team that has been built over the last few years to be that contender, and they have fallen short. So I'm out of excuses for Toronto right now. They're going to have to figure this out and turn it around very quickly, because there's already been talks over this past offseason of blowing it up a little bit and making some moves and trading Guerrero Jr., making other moves that can at least change the direction of the team. So time is of the essence for the Blue Jays right now. For the Astros, I think we're seeing a little bit more of age is catching up to this team, and they're an older roster. The young players have not stepped up. We're talking about Jeremy Pena. Has not. He had that postseason run with a couple years ago. He had a kind of an abysmal start to the season last year in 2023. They are an older team, an older roster. They're going to continue to have some turnover here pretty soon, with Bregman being a free agent at the end of the season. You do have some decent pieces here and there, but the pitching staff at the same time has been underwhelming with the injuries of Verlander, with the injury. We've had issues with Framber Valdez. We've had issues at times with Christian Javier. So the pitching staff has not been as strong as what we've seen it from the Houston Astros over the last few years. And yet they still find a way to win. But I think at some point, old age does catch up. Father Time is undefeated. We've heard that our entire lives in sports. And I think at some point it's going to catch up to the Houston Astros, and we're kind of starting to see that with in this division, as the Rangers, who are the younger of the group, they're more talented right now than the Astros. So this is going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on through 2024 to see if this the real Astros, what we're seeing at 3-7 record, or we know that the championship caliber team that they are going to turn it around again like they did last year, because they had a very slow start out the gate in 2023. They were able to piece it together and be able to push themselves to be a contender in 2023. Can they do that again? And that takes a lot. That takes a lot out of a team, especially an older roster. So something to keep an eye on right now. But I think that's something that we're going to be talking about quite a bit. Is the age factor finally coming into the Astros here in 2024?
And then, JG, before you get out of here this morning, obviously pitching injuries in Atlanta, pitching injuries with the Guardians, and now there's talk that the pitch clock is a factor behind some of these pitching injuries that we're seeing this season and last season as well. Data takes time to compile. Injuries happen in sports a lot. Pitchers get hurt a lot. Tommy John surgery has almost basically become a rite of passage in the world of pitching in Major League Baseball, because it seems like everyone goes under the knife at some point for Tommy John. What is your take this morning as we have the narrative that the pitch clock needs to be looked at because it's causing these injuries to top-tier pitchers in Major League Baseball?
So as you said, data, it takes time. We haven't had the pitch clock long enough to really gather the information that we are wanting to believe in, that this is a cause of the injuries. Now, Can it be? Yes, I do think that is a factor. I think that is a factor in what's causing the injuries because you've had players say we're not getting a pitcher. Pitching is so difficult on the body because it is a full body exercise, if you will. And it's an unnatural ability of what you're putting your body through because the shoulder itself, the elbow, the torque on it, it is such a hard mechanic to be able to utilize and do. It's putting so much strain on ligaments and tendons and muscles. So the recovery time when you have a pitch clock lessens. And again, we went from 3-hour ball games to immediately a 2.5-hour ball game, 30 minutes. So you're reducing recovery time for pitcher in between innings significantly through a game. What I'm looking at more so that we do have better data and information on is the sheer fact that velocity continues to rise up in the game from pitchers. And why that is a factor is this. We are telling pitchers more and more today, we don't care what your strike percentage is. We don't care if you can locate your pitch. Can you throw a baseball 100 miles an hour? That is a factor more than anything else. And you're telling these guys who are not big guys. Again, Spencer Strider is not a big guy, and he is throwing the ball 100 miles an hour. That is a huge factor in today's game where these are throwers now. We don't have pitchers in today's game. The era of Pedro Martinez and Tom Glavine and John Smoltz, Greg Maddux, the era of that we grew up in the 90s, and that was one of the best eras of pitching I think we've had in baseball history. Again, I know Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, you could throw Kerry Wood out there, Mike Mussina. Again, one of the better eras of pitching that we dealt with in the 90s and early 2000s. And we are so far away from that because we want throwers on the mound instead of pitchers. It used to be an art. Pitching used to be an art form that have guys that can be able to maneuver the ball all over the place and locate and be able to hit the ball in the corner and sit there and say that is an ideal pitch. Whereas you're having guys just throw the ball down the middle at 100 miles an hour. That, I think, is more of a factor than the pitch clock as of right now. Now, again, time, if we get another 2 more years of data, at least 2 more years of data, and make it 4 to 5 years of the pitch clock, and we can see the numbers are still continuing to rise on Tommy John surgery, then yes, I will agree that the pitch clock is a huge factor in it. But right now, we know the data of what's going on with Driveline. And for those who don't know, Driveline is a program for pitchers to be able to throw harder, to be able to increase their velocity, increase the speed of the ball coming out of the hand, the spin rate. We're putting more spin on, which again, it's a mechanic that has to take place for the ball to spin more and be able to increase the velocity on the process and the movement of certain pitches, that it puts so much stress and tension on the ligaments. Driveline has been a big factor and cause of that. And I'll say this, it's a good program for certain players, not for everybody. And we're trying to get everybody to throw 100 miles an hour, and their bodies can't handle that. So we're seeing the rise of surgeries and injuries because not everybody can handle throwing 100 miles an hour, and that should be fine. That should be okay. Be a pitcher that can throw 92 to 95 miles an hour. You don't have to ramp up your body to throw 97 to 100 and then go through arm issues within a month, and then you're out for the year, and then you can't throw 100 miles an hour anymore at that point. So is the pitch clock a factor to be determined? But I believe it is. But we do have data and information that the velocity increase and the importance of velocity increase is a bigger factor and bigger cause of the injuries more so than anything else right now.
JG, we've got 2 minutes left real quick here, and I know this is probably going to be a truncated answer for you. What is the correlation between that and college baseball then? Because you look at college baseball, and obviously, depending on your definition of pipeline, it is a pipeline to Major League Baseball, but there's also foreign players, and you have players coming in from different spaces. But is that something where college programs look at it and say, listen, we need fireball throwers. That's what we're looking for. That's what we value. Or are there top college programs who are teaching these young athletes how to pitch? What does that look like from the collegiate side of it?
So you're actually seeing a lot of college programs going through the driveline process that Major League Baseball pitchers are doing. So, and there's information and data that are being used. Wake Forest is one of the best. I will say this, one of the best as far as how they handle pitching mechanics and pitching in development with the program they have. But it's all based around a pitching program that Major League Baseball pitchers go through and use to handle certain aspects of your mechanics. I think college players able to be dissected better because you have time and it's not as many games. You're playing 50 games in college, not 150 to 160 games that you play in professional baseball. So the aspect of breaking down mechanics is a little bit easier for a college coach because you have time to do it and less games to be able to handle certain aspects of. But you see that in college baseball where we had guys at Tennessee, Chase Burns, who's now at Wake Forest this year. He was a 100 miles an hour pitcher throughout his time in college. You had Paul Skeens last year at LSU. You have guys that are fireball guys. You're having high school kids. There's a video, I actually saw a couple videos on Twitter that you have high school kids throwing 95 to 99 miles an hour right now. And that's great if they can handle it, which at that point, it's I hate to say it, it's almost inevitable for a kid at that age. Depends on the size. I got to watch Clayton Kershaw pitch in high school. Clayton was he was different. He was 6'4" in high school. He was 220 pounds in high school, throwing 97 effortlessly. Again, and we talk about Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens throws 100 miles an hour effortless. So I mean, certain players can get away with it and do and be able to be the exception to the rule. But again, we're talking about trying to get everybody in baseball to throw 100 miles an hour. And that goes from the high school ages to the college ages to professional baseball, where that is the factor. That is what the goal is that you're having these coaches and teams push velocity instead of just saying, let's teach you how to pitch. Let's recreate the art form and be able to go from there. And that right now has not been the case, and it's trickling from the professional game all the way down to college right now.
JG, we always appreciate you, sir. Enjoy the rest of your morning.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you.
Wealth of knowledge, that man is, Mo. Wealth of knowledge.
Always
a wealth of knowledge is JG. Mo, obviously I wasn't here for a good chunk of last week, so I missed the big move in Buffalo. Stefon Diggs shipped out of Buffalo for 3 bags of Lay's potato chips and a half of a Twinkie. He makes his way over to the Houston Texans. And now that we are a few days removed from that trade, Mo, obviously we now have the new expectations that are being laid. And you have Houston fans talking Super Bowl. And I hate to be someone who is going to rain on a parade over there in Houston. But Mo, I think we need to temper expectations in Houston, because let's not forget that although Stefon Diggs is a talented wide receiver, he is getting a little older. He's no longer a 23-year-old standout wide receiver who has all the upside in the world. He is pushing his late 20s and early 30s, which is getting older in the wide receiver world. He is also on his 3rd NFL team, which is something that superstar wide receivers don't often say unless they fall into a certain category. I'm not going to label Diggs this morning, but if you look at the history of the NFL and you look at superstar wide receivers, the ones who have been to 3 or more teams usually all have something in common. And also, let's not forget that he's coming from a team with a pretty good quarterback in Josh Allen, with pretty high expectations in the Buffalo Bills, and they weren't really able to get there. So all things considered, now you're coming to Houston with a rookie quarterback going into year number 2. Most rookies who have good rookie seasons, you usually see a step back in year 2. Maybe this will be the exception to the rule, but maybe it won't be with CJ Stroud. And also, I know you're looking at potentially an easier division, kind of, sort of, maybe. But I'm also looking at that division. I'm saying there are some decent teams in there. It's not necessarily a walkover division because you do have Trevor Lawrence and the Jags there. And yes, they underperformed the second half of last season, but Trevor was also injured the second half of last season. Let's not discount Anthony Richardson and what he has going on in Indianapolis. The Colts were a good team with a backup quarterback for the majority of the season. You would have to imagine they're going to be around 500 this season. So I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying they're not going to win a lot of games, Mo. But I think to go from not being in the Super Bowl conversation to being in it just because you traded for Stephon Diggs, it's a bit of a jump for me. And oh, by the way, Josh Allen seems to get along with everybody. And him and Diggs struggled. What's it going to look like year 2 for CJ Stroud if he takes a step back and you got Diggs? I'm just saying, these problems clearly, it's no longer a coincidence. It's no longer a happenstance. I think we can call it a pattern now for Stephon Diggs. So what does that look like? Oh, and by the way, Mo, is he even the number 1 receiver in Houston?
That's interesting. I think they project him to be the number 1, but you bring up a valid point. If you get back a healthy Hank Dell to go with Nico Collins, if Diggs is anywhere near what he's been, you can make a case it's one of the better receiving cores in the National Football League. And look, he might be the number 1, but if he's as good as advertised, I would expect that Hank Dell and Nico Collins will actually put up bigger numbers because of the attention that Diggs will draw. They're going to be more productive, and maybe that's the plan. I mean, I'm sure Diggs might not like that plan, but that might be the plan. My concern with Diggs, obviously, is that used to the young football team. And obviously you have a young second-year star quarterback who, you brought it up, they tend to take a step back because people adjust to them and their habits, and then he's going to have to readjust to that. What I would say to Texans fans is, I think your team is going to make the playoffs. I do believe they're going to be a playoff contender, but I think the addition of Diggs isn't a default setting to Super Bowl. There will be some growing pains with Stroud. It's natural progression. DeMeco Ryans is a second-year head coach, a young head coach. I do think that DeMeco Ryans could be a very big factor in how they deal with Stephon Diggs. I think he will deal with him completely differently than Sean McDermott did. So in that way, I can understand why they made the move. But as far as them, we're already putting them in the conversation of the Super Bowl. I would tell Texans fans to be tempered. I think you're a playoff contender. Super Bowl contender is a whole nother thing.
And Stephon Diggs will be 31 this season. He turns 31 in November. And I think it's fair to say the Buffalo Bills lost the trade, but you see all the reports coming out of Buffalo following the trade, and the narratives all seem to be the same, which was Buffalo had reached a point where they were going to move Diggs regardless. So when you get to that point where it doesn't matter what we get back for him, we'll take the best option out there. Things clearly were not going well for Diggs with Buffalo and with Josh Allen, which, again, it didn't work with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. He's a pretty likable fella from all accounts. No one's really bad talking him in Minnesota. They all seem to want him back. Josh Allen's pretty likable from all accounts. I'm not saying CJ Stroud isn't likable, but I'm just saying, he's not working with these generally respected and likable quarterbacks on teams that are playoff bound, playoff aspiration. The Bills had a Super Bowl window at one point. I just don't know. I don't know what that looks like when he goes to Houston with a young team who just recently made the playoffs. And yeah, their hope is to make the playoffs this upcoming season, Mo, but it's not an expectation like Buffalo was. The expectation in Buffalo was we make the playoffs and win the division. Then we go on from there. Like, it's not the same level, I feel, that he had in Buffalo. So we shall see what that looks like. And if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you have no wide receivers right now. So hopefully you go out and you get some, because Curtis Samuel isn't it. And Cahill, I believe that's how you say his name, he is not it either. So hopefully Buffalo figures out that. Or maybe Josh Allen can elevate them. I don't know, Mo. We shall see as we progress forward. But let's talk a little NBA basketball right now. Playoff teams are set, Mo. The Rockets made a great run, but they've lost 5 in a row now, which unfortunately, if you are a Houston Rockets fan, that has knocked them out of the playoff race, which means that the Golden State Warriors are going to take that final spot. It does not look like the Warriors are going to be getting up any higher than that. They're currently, they're only a game and a half behind the Lakers. If they beat the Lakers tonight or tomorrow, whenever they play, maybe they'll move up to the 9 seed. But Mo, if you're looking at the West right now, it's the Timberwolves and the Nuggets are tied for first. The Thunder are a game back. We only have a handful of games left in the season. Who's taking the 1 seed? Minnesota, Denver, or OKC?
I think it's a toying cost between the Nuggets and the T-Wolves. I don't think OKC is going to overtake either one of those teams. I think OKC's main concern right now, they're trying to get healthy. Their best player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, has had a calf injury that's been bothersome. So they're worried about going into the postseason healthy. So I think it's going to be the Nuggets or the T-Wolves, who, by the way, they've got their own injury issues as well. So I think it'll finish 1, 2, 3. I'll throw it up. I'll say T-Wolves, Nuggets, and OKC.
And then things are really heating up in the West when it comes to the 6th seed, currently held by the Phoenix Suns, tied with the Pelicans. The Kings are only 1 game back. The Lakers are only a game and a half back. Mo, the 6th seed is very important. You don't want to have to go through the play-in nonsense.
Correct.
You just want to be in the playoffs and play in a playoff series. Who do you think? Are the Suns going to hang on to the 6th seed? Are the Pelicans or the Kings or the Lakers going to pop up there and take it away from them?
I feel so. Coming into the week, it was Phoenix's to lose, and I was like, they're going to find a way to lose it. They were a game ahead of the Pelicans, and they lost to the Pelicans last night, so they're tied with the Pelicans now.
Yep.
I just don't think Phoenix has. They don't have the horses, and I know when you say Bradley Beal, Book, KD, they don't defend. That they don't play enough defense to hold off teams, and they don't finish games strong. For all that firepower, they're one of the worst fourth quarter executing teams in the NBA. I think Phoenix is going to be in the play-in.
Who needs it more, the Pelicans, the Kings, or the Lakers? That's 6th seed.
Well, the Lakers do, because they want to avoid they'd like to be able to avoid the Nuggets. And if they got the 6th seed and OKC ended up being the 3 seed, the weird thing is the Lakers are OKC's kryptonite. As good as OKC is, the OKC's a finesse team. The Lakers, they just beat them up. They just dominate the boards. It's a horrible matchup for OKC. So it's a weird thing that if the Lakers fell into the 6th seed and they ended up with that matchup, because they would win that series. And suddenly you'd be like, whoa, the Lakers are in the 2nd round. That would be crazy.
What's also crazy is what's taking place in the Eastern Conference. Doc Rivers and the Bucks, they've lost 4 in a row.
Ugh.
And that 2nd seed is no longer a guarantee. The Magic and the Knicks are only a game behind the Bucks. The Cavaliers are only a game and a half behind the Bucks. And hey, 2.5 games back are the Pacers. I know there's only 4 or 5 left to play, but they're in the mix as well. We thought it was going to be the Bucks kind of walking away with the 2 seed. Obviously, no one's catching Boston for the 1 seed.
Right.
But the Bucks are struggling at the worst time to struggle, which is the home stretch before the playoffs. Mo, if the Bucks go on and lose 2 or 3 more games before the end of the season, they very easily could be the 5 seed going into the playoffs, as opposed to the 2. Not the best position for Milwaukee right now.
It's not, but they look old and they look tired. Giannis looks worn down. There's a disconnect between Giannis, Damian Lillard, and Doc. And every time they lose, Doc comes out and he talks about professionalism and attitude and effort, all those things. And I think that the players react to it. They show you the reaction and how they play the next game. I think there's a disconnect between Doc and the players. And I think the Bucks are going to end up in the 5th seed. I don't think they're going to turn this around. I just watched their game last night, and they look lifeless against a team that they should have beaten easily. And they found a way. Like, the Knicks are a good team, don't get me wrong, but they're not even at 100%. The Bucks had a lead, and then the Knicks sped the pace up, and the game was over. The Bucks can't play fast. They can't. They don't have the horses or the athletes to play fast. And Doc, as you know, he's not a great in-game adjuster. He doesn't make adjustments. The only thing he does is he elevates his level of yelling, but he doesn't make adjustments.
Well, coming into the NCAA men's tournament, there were 2 teams that kind of stood out just because they were a lot better on paper than a lot of the competition. That was North Carolina and UConn. Obviously, North Carolina fell a couple of rounds ago, but now we're looking at UConn looking to go back-to-back as far as NCAA titles go. Is that where it's going to go? Are they going to get the job done, or do you see them faltering in the finals?
I'm going to go with, I think UConn's going to win. They're just top to bottom, the most talented team. They've been a monster all year long. UConn has been to the men's tourney what South Carolina has been to the women's tourney. I will say the X factor, and it's an obvious X factor.
Yep.
If they cannot slow down Zach Edey, not just slow him down, because what Zach Edey does is he not only dominates the restricted area, the painted area, he gets your entire front line in foul trouble. If they can't slow down Zach Edey, if Purdue is able to play at their pace and it's more of a grind, I think UConn's in trouble. You don't have to stop Zach Edey, but you better find a way to slow him down at least, because if you can't slow him down, then you're going to play at Purdue's pace.
And that's the thing. You're never going to stop someone like him. He's going to get his buckets. But like you said, he can't be getting his buckets and be getting your guys in foul trouble. There has to be a give and take there. So whether that's letting him have a couple of easy ones to avoid getting into foul trouble early, because like you know, Mo, you get into foul trouble early, throw the playbook out the window, because now we're playing apprehensive because we don't want to get guys out early. We don't want to get that 3rd or that 4th foul. So everything is kind of changed up now. Now you're playing guys in crucial minutes that you probably weren't going to play in the first place because certain guys are in foul trouble. So for Purdue, that's easily the plan. Let him get some good looks early, let him get into a groove, and then hopefully catch the other team trying to be a little aggressive, trying to make some early stops, get them in foul trouble. And at that point, everything's going to fall into Purdue's lap.
Yeah, look, it all centers around what Edey can do. And I've watched throughout the tournament, some teams have done we'll stop everybody else and let Edey do his thing. That hasn't worked out well, because if he's eating the way he eats, you're literally still going to get in foul trouble, and he's going to get 35, 40 points. And if you double him too early, he's a good enough passer and Purdue's a good enough shooting team that they can hurt you that way as well. I will say this: UConn plays defense in a way that Purdue isn't used to. They have athletes that Purdue hasn't competed against yet. I expect UConn to actually attack Edey on offense and go at him, even though he's a long. I mean, I think he's 7'4", 7'5", long. I think they're going to be aggressive and try to attack them. I think UConn's best defense against Purdue is their offense.
Mo, I haven't thought about golf in a hot minute, but Tiger's playing this weekend, baby. And I'm going to be there because when Tiger plays, I watch. And I don't know what it is about him. I don't know why I'm drawn to Tiger Woods. But for whatever reason, Mo, I don't even know all the rules to golf. If you were to sit down and be like, so Chris, an average golf fan knows this, and that, I probably wouldn't know those rules. I just put the ball into the hole. I know about the strokes. I know we don't want to be in the water or the sand. I know some of the lingo. They call it the drink. I think that's fantastic. But that's about it for me, Mo. But I will be tuning into the Masters because 48-year-old Tiger Woods is going to be there. He is looking to make history this upcoming weekend. He is looking to make his 24th consecutive cut at the Masters. He is currently tied with 23, but if he makes the cut this weekend, that will be the record. He has a new caddy with him. I don't know the significance of that, but apparently it's a big deal. This caddy has never done tournaments with him. He's only done kind of one-off appearances. If you're a golf fan, you're probably like, well, Chris, maybe it is. I don't know, Mo. Some are saying it's a big deal. But the last time that Tiger was in the Masters, he finished 47th. That was back in 2022. Last season, he really only competed in one tournament. He finished 45th in that. That's actually his best finish since the car accident. The other 4 times he competed, he had to withdraw early or he did not make the cut. I get it, Mo. He's not the Tiger he used to be. It is very likely that we're going to see that he pulls out for injury before the second round or into the it's happened so many times the last handful of years. I wouldn't be surprised, but I have hope. I have hope, and I'm going to be there for it.
Chris, you're tuning in because you saw Tiger when he was at his peak.
Yep.
And I saw Tiger when he was at his peak. And you're tuning in because even though he's 48, you're still looking at Tiger, and there's a part of you that goes, he can capture that magic one more time. He can get on one of those rolls one more time. And I'm on board for that. I 100% believe, and I might be in the minority, that Tiger Woods, when it's all said and done, he's going to win another major. Now, I'd love it if it's the Masters, and maybe it will be. He has a chance, and that's it. When Tiger Woods is walking the course with you, he's like the boxer who's past his prime, but he's still got the knockout power. He's got a shot, and that alone makes him watchable, right? He's Tiger. And here's the thing: golf is a unique sport in this way. We're saying 48-year-old Tiger Woods, but there's so many guys that in their 40s that have won tournaments. Tiger's in a different way because he's 48 and he's dealt with unlimited amount of injuries to his body, like up and down his body. So he's not the physical god that he once was, but I'm going to watch Chris because I believe he still can do it. I think he can pull it out. And that's the draw of Tiger Woods. He was so great. He was so special. I'm going to watch him just because. I don't know golf like you. I know there's a driver, the putter. I know those kind of things. But if you wanted me to get into the nuances of the game, I'm the wrong guy. If you ask me what I know about golf, I'm going to say Tiger Woods.
Yeah, when they're like, well, he's pulling out the 5-iron, I have no idea what the different irons mean. I don't know why they're numbered.
Right. I'm the guy that would say something like, so there's 5 irons. Like, no, just that's a 5-iron, bro. They're not off the okay, got you.
I know the driver is only used for driving, the putter is only used for putting, right. And then there's just a variety of clubs we use in between, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, I've never got on a golf course. If I did, I'd be the guy that'd be using the same thing for everything.
Right.
I'd be using a driver to putt. They'd be like, look at this idiot.
What a way to start off on Monday. Close us out, Mo.
Hey, thank you guys for taking time out in your morning to spend it with Chris and I. Check out all the great content that we have at the Wire to Wire Network. Wire to Wire is growing, folks, just like the morning show. And it's because of your support, your sharing, your subs, your following. We appreciate you so much. Check out all our great content, Wire to Wire Network.
Hey, make sure you're back here, same time, same place tomorrow. We didn't get to it today, but we're going to open up tomorrow's show with our WrestleMania reactions. Newsflash, the Uso versus Uso match was still awful, even 3 days later. So we'll talk all about that. We got JG on the show tomorrow as well to talk a little more Major League Baseball with us. We're prepping for the NBA playoffs. We have the NCAA tournaments wrapping up, all of that and more. Coffee and sports. It's the morning show powered by